Hello, I'm Robert, and fact checker and science blogger. I also this is to help people with the Doomsday Debunk group who are scared of many things. And this time it's about false prophecy. And we've got yet another of these false prophets, David Montaigne. And he is prophesying that the world is going to turn upside down on the 21st of December. And I'm trying to help the people who are scared of this. So, and he says Jesus is going to return. So, everyone who says Jesus is going to return, and they've been saying that for thousands of years, for 2,000 years, they have all been wrong. This is the worst track record of any method of predicting anything. Not one of those hundreds of people have ever been right. The Bible says very clearly that this does not work. It says, no one knows the day or hour. The angels in heaven don't know, and the Son himself doesn't know, only the Father knows. And it says, therefore do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Let the day's own trouble be sufficient for the day. And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow, they toil not, neither do they spin. In the New Testament, Jesus was talking to them in the present about things for their present day and their near future, but he spoke to them in a way that is still relevant to us today. He did not give prophecies for our time 2,000 years later. And everything there is about kindness and love. And you can tell the false prophets because they do not come to us with kindness and love, not in what they say, not in the effect on you. You just get terrified, scared, and I help people every day who are suicidal because of these false prophecies. That is not Jesus' word if it is making you suicidal. That is not right. The Bible, and it's not a puzzle game or cryptic crossword. If Jesus wanted to prophesy that he is going to return, say on the 1st of January 2001, he would have just said so. And instead of saying that, he warns against date setting. As I say, it is simply never right. No method of prediction has a worse track record than this. And it's not the fault of the Bible that these people keep getting the dates wrong. It is their fault. They just should not do it because the Bible warns against it. And then and with all that bit about cryptic, they work out, you get these false prophets and they do calculations, they add things together. This one just now, what he's done is to take the Mayan calendar, and the Mayans knew nothing about Jesus, and he's taken 7 years from the genus, and they knew nothing about the Mayans. He's added them together, and the Mayan calendar goes forward to 16 million years into the future, and he claims that by doing this juggling around with numbers, he has proved that the world's going to turn upside down. And the Bible warns specifically against people who do things like this. It says, above all, you must understand that no prophecy of Scripture came about by the prophet's own interpretation of things. For prophecy never had its origin in the human will, but prophets, though human, spoke from God as they were carried along by the Holy Spirit. So anyone who claims to do it by jiggling around with numbers and calculating things, then they are not a prophet, in the sense of the Bible. And obviously there are many people who just ignore that warning, but that does not mean that they're right. They have always been wrong. So just ignore them. And they are false prophets, they are paper tigers. They are full of hot air, tissue paper, because their ideas are not based on anything. It's just puffed up with hot air, lots and lots of hot air. They get so hot and so heated up and so full of hot air that they start dribbling out words and saying all sorts of crazy things. But they're just tissue paper full of hot air. And that's all they are. So hopefully that already for some of you, it should really be for all of you. If you're a Christian, do not listen to false prophecies of the coming of Jesus. They are always wrong. Just don't listen to it. And if you're a Catholic, now many of the people who are scared are Catholics. Don't listen to false prophets. Listen to the Pope. He's the one who will tell you things. And if there was some miracle or some prophecy or something, then he would find out. He would look into it, and the Catholic Church would give it its seal of approval. They have not done this. So especially if you're Catholic, you should not listen to this as well. As the same as for everyone else. In addition, it obviously hasn't got the seal of approval of your church. You should not listen to it. Now, that is about all that I can say on the religious side, so I'm now going to talk about the science side, and how we absolutely know for a total certainty the world is not going to turn upside down on the 21st of December, or the 26th of December, or the 28th of December, or any of the dates that these people say. It is just absolute, utter pish, utter codswallop. It is nonsense. So I'll explain how we know this. First, you may know about babies. This is a baby with an ultrasound. You may know how you can look at in a mother's womb and see the baby through using ultrasound. And you just fire very high frequency sound into the mother's womb and you can see the baby. We can do something very similar with earthquakes. And so now I've got it up here. And we use particular earthquakes. And you can watch this video which goes into it in detail. The two types of waves, P waves and S waves, I don't need to go into the difference, but the main thing is the S waves, they can't go through liquid. And P waves can. And the P waves, they kind of refract through the liquid. This is the P waves, these dashed lines, faint lines. And they could go sideways like that, like the S waves, but they also are able to refract through the P wave, through the liquid, and then they leave a gap in between the two because of the special path they follow. S waves, let's just maximize this so you can see it properly. S waves, then they can't go through liquid. So this works like ultrasound. Instead of using ultrasound, we want infrasound. We want very low frequency sounds to see inside the earth. But the frequencies are so very, very low that we can't just do it even by sort of hammering on the surface or something. We need an earthquake to look inside the earth. But luckily, there are lots of earthquakes, so we have lots of opportunities and we can just constantly see inside the earth all the time. Every day you can look inside the earth. And you get these waves and you detect them right out to there, but you don't get any S waves beyond that point. And the reason is because they go into the liquid and they don't come out again, because they can't go through liquid. So that's absolutely certain that it's solid down to depth of thousands of kilometers. And this chap is saying it's liquid right up to the surface. We have known that he is wrong since the beginning, early in the 20th century. He is a century out of date in his geology. And this makes it absolutely impossible that the Earth's crust can slip, because it's solid rock down to huge, huge depths. And solid rock can't slip. It's as absurd as Mount Everest sprouting wings and deciding to fly over to Antarctica. This can't happen. Even a tiny hill can't do it. Even a little hillock, 100 meters high hillock, can't move. This is ordinary, everyday common sense. And the Earth is solid down to great depth. Now, in the early 20th century, they used to believe that the crust, some people used to believe, half the people believed in continental drift, and the other half thought that maybe the crust could move very, very slowly. Not quickly. It wouldn't just turn upside down in one day. But they've had puzzles. They found fossils in Antarctica that obviously couldn't have formed there because they were of warm tropical creatures. And how can you have fossils of tropical creatures in Antarctica? So there were the two ideas, that the continents move or that the entire crust moves. And so one chap, then he wrote this book which got a forward by Einstein in the early days of Einstein, and Einstein said, I think there's a lot of merit in this idea that the crust moves. This was because he didn't know about all this. This was very early, before people knew much. We now know it is impossible. So even Einstein can make mistakes. And this was a mistake. And we know that it's like this. Even then, it wasn't going to be turning upside down in a day. And that would be absolutely, they'd laugh at that too. So we now know it's like this. The very, very thin continental crust and the ocean crust. The stiffer mantle, the outer core which is liquid, and the inner core which is solid. And those, we know that because of those earthquakes. And because the ones that go down like that, they get stuck and they don't go through it. The ones that go like that, then they go through solid rock. We know that that is all solid rock. This gives the idea of the depth. So it's down to a depth of 2,885 kilometers plus a few little bit for the crust. Getting on for 3,000 kilometers is solid rock. So how do the continents move? This is how the continents move. So let's turn the sound off. So let's bring it forward a bit. You don't need to watch all the... Well, the continents started off with just tiny little masses of rock. It took a while for any continents to even form in the early universe, in the early Earth. And gradually over time they accumulated and gradually got bigger. And they were moving around even back then. And to this day they're still moving. And this shows how they move. And gradually, now this movement, it looks quite fast, but every single frame is 1 million years. Look, there's tens of millions of years passing by. It's very, very, very slow motion on the speed of ordinary life. Even a century, you won't notice a century. You won't notice 1,000 years. It will be exactly the same on this scale. Even tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. Gradually, eventually, then you start noticing the familiar continents, and notice there how that is South America, and that is Africa. And notice how the two seem to fit each other. This was one of the early clues that the continents move. And what's more, they found the same fossils here and here, which showed for a certainty that they were originally joined together. And lots of other things like that, fossils, the same there and there, say, or same there and there. And that is part of how they work out, like a huge detective puzzle, they work out how the continents all fitted together. And then they work that together with geology and strata and all sorts of clues and the temperatures. You can measure what the temperature was and so on. And it's a huge, huge puzzle that they are able to solve in order to work out how the continents moved, going back for hundreds of millions of years. They're pretty certain, and beyond that it gets more uncertain. So that is how they know, absolute certainty, they know it's moving, and that this is what happens. And now you just see these two, eventually they split apart and go apart. And notice how Australia is one of the fastest moving, but it's moving slowly. But look, India crashed into there and it created the Himalayas. And here's Australia, moves very fast at the moment. It was moving slowly before, but now it's moving fast. Yep. So I'm going to look into that a little bit more. So just look at Australia there. Just watch how it goes. Slowly. Then you're just speeding up. See, it's going very fast now. So that is actually causing problems for GPS because it's moving so fast. And these are all the little dots that they use for GPS, and actual things like tankers moving through very narrow canals, or even tractors and doing automatic and things like mechanical diggers doing automatic digging out of things, and they can do this accurate to the centimetre, but only if they have got the position of Australia right. And you actually get this problem, they have to keep updating the position of Australia in order to get the GPS working right. So this is really a major problem. You know, how GPS keeps up with the continent in constant motion. They have to keep updating the GPS, the references for it, so that people know how to measure it. And they've got a very complicated system that is used, especially useful in Australia because it's moving so fast, to help them use GPS accurately, only needed for people who are using very, very accurate precision and positioning through GPS. And if I go back to this, then this shows you can actually measure the movement of the continents with GPS. Now, I know this looks a little bit difficult to read, but these are arrows showing the direction and the amount, and it's only tens of millimeters or centimeters a year, and so although they're great big long arrows, and the length of the arrow shows how fast it's moving. You can see how Australia is moving very fast. And then this New Zealand is moving in a different direction, and Africa is moving like that, and Europe is moving like that, and the Americas are moving like that. We can directly detect it from one year to the next. Even during the year, GPS can tell us that this continent has moved just a little bit, and the UK where I live has moved just a little bit, and the Atlantic is getting wider every year by a few centimetres. Africa's moving a bit. You can see that South America is actually moving upwards. It's still moving towards North America. All these different movements. You can actually see them moving very, very slowly, centimetres a year. And this was a huge puzzle originally. How can solid rock move? Well, and that was partly why it took so long for it to be accepted. Well, what it is that there are lots of tiny, tiny little crystals inside the rocks, and these can move very, very slightly. And because you've got vast amounts of rock, hundreds of kilometres or kilometre scale lumps of rock moving very slowly through tiny, tiny movements of the crystals, then, well, let's move me back into the picture so you can see me. Yes, sorry. Yes, so lots and lots of tiny, tiny movements of the crystals, but it adds up. So you've got a kilometre region of rock and it's moving very, very slowly. Then it can do that because of all the tiny motions of the crystals. It's very like the way that the tar in a soft road. There's actually quite soft rock deep down. It's heated up and it's warmed. It makes it a little bit soft, and that also helps. But on the surface, you've got moving rocks as well, and that's obviously just solid, but it still is able to move, just very, very, very slowly. And that's how it does it, through tiny, tiny motions of the crystals. And you don't notice anything. You can't push a boulder and sort of make a dent in it, or squeeze it, or smudge it around. You can't do anything with a big heavy boulder. But if you were very, very patient and you had a lot of pressure and you did it for just very, very slowly, then over millions of years you could change the shape of a boulder. So it's like that. And and especially deep down where the rock is a little bit softer. So that's what's happening all the time. But you can't just push Mount Everest sideways. You can't even take a tiny bit of a boulder and push the top of a boulder sideways. You just try push and push, you can't do it. It can't happen instantly. It only happens very, 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 very slowly on this normal scale. And it's not like when the Atlantic is opening like that. It's not like the rock is actually being created in the middle of the ocean all the time and pushing outwards sideways. and that rock is coming up from deep below the sea and coming up onto the surface in the mid-Atlantic ridge and pushing it sideways. And this was discovered, that was discovered by stripy lines of magnetism, because the magnetic field keeps changing several times every million years. Then the magnetic field does change. North changes to south, and south changes to north. And if you measure the rocks along the Atlantic, then you can see that they've changed, and that there's a strip that's pointing north, and a strip that's magnetized pointing south. So that is real. Magnetic pole shifts are real, but they are very, very slow as well. This is the most recent magnetic pole shift, which was very fast, faster than they normally are. Each of these dots is 20 years. Even that very fast motion is like a century to get that far. And our magnetic poles are right up near the North Pole, the other one's right near the South Pole, and it would take absolute age, centuries, for this to start happening. So we're not due a magnetic pole shift anytime soon either. But if we ever do happen, and yes, and he prophesied, the same chap prophesied in December 28, we're going to be hit by this asteroid, but it's been removed from the list, and it's not going to hit us. There never was an asteroid warning. So he just picks things up on the web and claims they're disasters. He doesn't have the first idea about asteroids really. Anyway, so the magnetic pole shift, which is a real thing, that won't do anything harmful. It's happened many times in the last million years. The worst that happens is it lets a little bit through of ultraviolet light right in the middle of it, which is the part of sunlight that gives you sunburn. It comes through anyway. You get a little bit more in the middle of a pole shift because of the Earth's magnetic field is reduced. That causes chemicals to build up in the atmosphere because of magnetic storms, which causes to thinning of the ozone layer, which leads to more ultraviolet light, which means you will sunburn more easily. So it's a long, complicated chain of results, but the short answer is that maybe a few thousand years, maybe hundreds of thousands of years from now, tens of thousands of years, we don't know, that our generation's great, many times grandchildren may have to wear more sun cream to protect themselves against sunburn in the middle of a magnetic pole shift. And it also is important because a lot of sunburn can also be a factor for skin cancer, and they will also have to protect their eyes with special glasses to protect themselves from cataracts. So for a few centuries, or it could be even longer, it could be thousands of years if it was a very slow pole shift. So this could happen. Not that everyone's going to die, but if you're sensible, then you're going to wear more on a sunny day. You're going to wear more sun cream and have special glasses in this very, very distant future. This is not a problem for us. It would also, in that very distant future, then satellites will need a bit more protection, but you don't hardly need to think about that, because the satellites in low Earth orbit, they're not very well protected, but any that up in geostationary orbit, they are, because they can get hit by solar storms. So it's just a case of making your satellites a little bit more resistant thousands of years into the future. It's hardly a problem. And then you've also got the electricity grids. Well, our electricity grids are already hardened against solar storms, much more than they were in the 1980s when we had our only blackout due to a solar storm which was in Quebec for a few hours. That is not going to happen again, and even a very, very severe solar storm is not going to do much at all. Maybe a few people get a blackout, but you'd hardly notice. So I've got a bit about that there. So anyway, and this is his last. I say this chap prophesied the world would end in 2016. He prophesied it would end in 2002 as well, and I think he's done it lots of times. But I haven't managed to find out. I haven't tried searching up to find out. But he's such a silly chap. His ideas are very silly. he's still got this book on sale, saying the world will end in 2002. How? I mean, who's going to go and buy a book saying the world will end in 2002? Most of the false prophets take their books down when nothing happens, but he hasn't. He just left it up, so you can just go and read for yourself that the world didn't end in 2002. I mean, it's obvious because we're still here. And as for Nostradamus, they often say, oh, Nostradamus said this, so the world is going to end. But Nostradamus, he only made one prediction for our time, July 1999, and he said that the Pope, by talking to a leader with Mongol or could be Lombard connections, would actually accidentally restart a major war in July 1999. This did not happen. Nothing even remotely resembling that. No Pope even talked, as far as I know, to a leader with Mongol or Lombard connections. Certainly didn't accidentally restart a major war. You know, Nostradamus' reputation is based only on the reinterpretation of his very enigmatic quatrains after the events that he's supposed to have prophesied. He doesn't work in terms of prophesying something that hasn't happened yet. So no, you don't use Nostradamus for prophecy. His reputation isn't. It's not. No. And Montaigne himself, if you want to know about him, he's an electrician. And he's son of two teachers, and just for some reason he's decided that he knows all about what's going to happen in the future, that he can see the future, and that he's a prophet. And we get a lot of people like that. The answer is no, he is not a prophet. And it will just be an ordinary day, like every other ordinary day, like all the other past days. Well, let's just show you, while I'll just end, I'll show you some of the dates that we have already prophesied, list of articles. So some of the dates that we have already, so let's look for, oh, this is brought up another window, okay. Past failed prophecies. So these are all ones that scared people, and that I've had to do debunks for. So all the ones in 2019, March 21, June the 9, June the 30, July the 2, July the 12, July the 17, August the 1st, September 24, September 29, and this is not a complete list. And then here are some of the past ones from previous, May the 15th, September 24, 2015, that was a big one. September 28, I mean, in terms of lots of people got very scared by that one. October the 12th, where is it? September 23, 2017, that was one of the worst ever in terms of the number of people who got scared by that one. And loads of these. And yes, so July the 17th, 2019, June the 30, June 9, 2019, March 21. So those are the main ones that scared people so far this year. And they're just all fake news, it's all nonsense. And this will just be another date that I will add to that long list for 2019. I think there's some that I haven't added yet. It's after September 29. So, again, I hope that this again helps you to see these are just false prophets. Let's just go back to the other one. Yeah, they're just false prophets. They're just paper tigers, hot air, and you should not pay any attention to any of these folk.